are also using Fathom. It's so good. They like it.
Is working?
Looks like it's recording and making.
Because I didn't. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I did not catch that because I didn't see recording. But hey, this is amazing. This is our first conversation that we are putting up forth. Just a little bit of background on both of us. I'll start with myself. A bit of a varied background, coming from startups and coaching, and right now working on Shutterly, myself and a small team, and it's a really fun thing. You guys can check us out, shutterly.co. Follow us on Instagram. Uh, I don't even know if what's going to be relevant by the time people watch this, because at early stages things change very quickly. But essentially, for now, I can say we are creating realistic photos that nobody can tell apart from reality, and that's a very interesting challenge, especially today. A lot of doors have opened up, but in order to cross that final edge, uh, there's a lot of stuff to do, and it's not straightforward, but that makes it really interesting. So that's what we're up to at Shutterly, and we're working with people and with businesses for that. And I have a background with coaching, and that's also something that Naomi and I share. So Naomi is a coach. She has over 30 years of experience as a coach, as a therapist, counselor, all sorts of in that area of helping people. So that's something that is tremendously valuable. Why does that even connect to to startups? Why does that connect? It's like the microcosm and the macrocosm. The human is the microcosm, the existence is the macrocosm. How do the two connect? You know, and how can we bring forth a contribution to the world that's really true to ourselves? And I see startups as a great opportunity for someone to exercise their creativity, come together with a small team, and see how we can contribute in some way to make a change with technology to helping people. And Naomi and I were just talking about how, hey, why is there this trade-off of I hear all these stories, founders in there who spent a lot of time in their 20s and 30s working on their startups, a lot losing their hair, whatever, losing their health. And we were literally just talking about how that trade-off may not be necessary. What if it's the opposite? And that's at Shutterly, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm making a conscious effort to cultivate an environment where you can grow as an individual inside out, and at the same time you get to contribute in a high intensity environment that you would see at a startup, which is what we are. And I think that's a really incredible opportunity. And why do I even think that's relevant or possible? Well, because I went through a 7 month. It was 8 months when I went through it, because it's not based on the Gregorian calendar, but rather the positions of the planets, which is actually the real. I would say that's the real calendar we should follow, because the positionings, this whole. I'm not going to get into that right now, but anyways, it was 8 months, and called Sadhana Pada. It's at the Isha Yoga Center in Coimbatore, India. And the most powerful part about that was it was 7 days a week. You're living in an ashram, living with monks, getting this kind of yogic training every single day. You're waking up 5:30 a.m. You got to be there to do your yoga and meditation practices with the whole group, and everybody's committed. And during the day, we're volunteering. And so, the kind of volunteering I was doing, it was like office work, right? Different things I did, like I did serving food, I did farming, I did all kinds of other typical activities you would think of in an ashram or monastic environment. But my main responsibilities were on the more like office type of stuff, more commercial type of work. And there, the focus was to just work on yourself. But whatever was required, we're doing it. And so as I was working on these things, because like volunteering is what it actually was, right? And so in doing that, I came to the realization through experience that, hey, we can work 7 days a week, and feel more and more energetic because of the way that we're living. And what are we doing? We're just taking care of simple things, right? If you look at all the biohackers, you look at all the coaches, you look at everybody and high performers, athletes, high performing athletes, very simple stuff. Taking care of your food, your sleep, and I'm gonna say media food or your media diet because it's extremely important what you input into your mind, right? Because your mind is like the society's garbage bin, right? And then you have exercise, and then you have your yogic or meditative practices, something that allows you to go deeper and deeper into yourself, away from the animalistic brain and closer to the creative brain. That's one way of looking at it, but you're going even deeper into deeper levels. So if all of these things can be taken care of, if you have an environment that cultivates that, and if you can do that for a small group of people and everyone is aligned to make toward a particular intention, which we are at Shutterly, as I mentioned, to just help people by creating realistic images. That's it. And if we can do that and we have an environment, so we're aligned towards this mission, we have an environment that allows us to be at peak performance as a coach. I know a lot of what that requires, and I'm constantly working on myself to do that as well. So if we bring these two together, I wonder what we could accomplish. But that's secondary what we accomplish. Primary is who we get to become as human beings, the evolution that we get to create on the level of the body, mind, emotions, energy. Man, like it's a bit of a long introduction, but this is how we're this is basically the premise of what this entire conversation is, and future conversations could be. But it's not all about Shutterly. Naomi has a lot of other projects. I'm also going to be opening up different kind of doors, and we'll just see where things go. Right? This is just consider this a dance that we're doing with the existence and with all of you who was here to join us. We're going to have an amazing, incredible time. I don't know what the fuck we're going to do, but we're just going to show up to contribute and share our journey as we work on ourselves. So yeah, Naomi, what's coming up for you?
I love what you shared. I had so many reflections of, but essentially what you said about my 30-year history of working in wellness and personal development in holistic health is that, yeah, I think it's such an incredible time right now, actually, because when I first started studying coaching in 1997, and I first started meditating at that time as well, it, it was such a different world in terms of so many things, but certainly, you know, what's available in terms of yogic technology, meditation, personal development, coaching awareness, even holistic health awareness, like what you mentioned, biohacking, and so many things have kind of been studied and just being made more available to people. But yeah, my whole life has been devoted to this process of really living a lifestyle personally that cultivates constantly evolution, reaching full potential, and showing up in a way in work, in relationships, in everything I do as 100%, like as close to 100% capacity as I can, with my perception, with my intuition, with my ability to communicate, to contribute, to work, to offer support to the world. So yeah, this is like my jam, I love this stuff. And I just absolutely agree with you that there is the only issue that we have right now is just in terms of creating cultures in companies, in startups, in any kind of work environment and life environment. The only issue with not creating an environment that nurtures all levels of the being and that really supports life and health and vitality and full aliveness is just a lack of valuing it. And I think maybe a lack of awareness around what that really looks like, because there's a whole lot of noise in the world and a whole lot of marketing. So a lot of people get distracted by that, but yeah, I mean, to me, it's absolutely essential and it's the future. We have to do it because every issue we have in the world, every solution is there. We just have to be able to nurture people's true creativity and genius, you know? And all of these ways are, yeah, creating an environment where that flowers is totally possible and totally fun, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's what I'll say right now.
I think that's amazing. A beautiful segue into what I invite you to share about
Hmm.
your recent journey to Bharat. Where did you go? And talk
Um,
about.
okay.
So Naomi went on this amazing um, Ayurvedic. I don't know
Yeah.
what to call it, so I'm gonna stop here. I'll let you take it from
Okay.
here,
Well,
please.
please say, because my pronunciation, please forgive me, is Bharat, but I don't know if that's correct.
Bha-
What is it?
Bharat.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And of course, we also call it India for people who don't know what that is. Um, oh my God, it's like, where do I start? I am so grateful for my life and for the opportunities that I have. I cannot believe that I get to be living this way, and I'm infinitely grateful for that. So, yeah, this is my third time. I'm actually going back in 2.5 weeks to Isha Yoga Center actually for um a program called the DNA of Success. So the thing that's how this connects to this conversation, which I love, is it's a program that Sadhguru has designed for the true DNA of success in terms of how to build companies based on the leaders, like how to upgrade yourself as a leader and truly create like fully successful, integritous, in alignment companies. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, that's exciting. And yeah, I just went to India. I've been studying Ayurveda for the past 21 years. My first Ayurvedic doctor I saw at a meditation retreat in 2003. And at the time, I was quite young, but I really had some serious health issues, a couple of autoimmune diseases and, diseases. But yeah, I was struggling a bit with my health and getting that like herbs and having him tell me about, how to eat, speaking of how to eat in a way that cultivates full potential and health and all prana, like aliveness, all of these things. Um, yeah, it really, really changed my life a lot, like incredibly, actually. And so I tend to go, I have this doctor in outside of Delhi who's amazing. He's been a friend and a mentor of mine since 2009. He makes incredible world-class herbs that he sells in many countries in Europe. He definitely has the best herbs in the world that I've found in terms of Ayurveda. And he's just amazing. And he has a great clinic where they do Panchakarma. That's what it's called, Panchakarma. So it's literally translated 5 therapies, and it's essentially like Ayurveda's deep detoxification and rejuvenation system. So if just briefly, it's like you go in, you get your pulse taken, which is how Ayurvedic doctors like really tap into how you're doing. And then you start you get many types of massages and shirodhara and body treatments and steam every day. There's a lot of super cool things like mud and herbs on the abdomen and so many layers of amazingness. Actually, I could talk about those things for a long time. But and then you also start with a liver cleanse, then you go into like that cleanses the pitta from the body, and then you go into large intestine cleanse, which cleanses the vata from the body, and then the excess, obviously, and then you go in at the end and they cleanse the kapha, which is like more sinus, like head, neck related. Yeah, and it's just incredible. It's really amazing experience. And yeah, just there's so many layers of nourishment and beauty and yeah, just real, I don't know, it's like everything that I've learned in my life, lucky for me, is more than just intellectual learning, you know, it's been experiential learning. And I think, you know, so many people, even what you were talking about at the beginning, like we just live however we do, you know, in our family culture, in our family nervous system, which we call, you know, in the community and the culture that we're in and are influenced by. And yeah, so many people just live like that and they don't know another way. So to have like immersive experiences, kind of like you with Sadhanapada, I don't know if that was the first time you were at IYC and at an ashram for that long. Yeah, it wasn't. But just by having that experience, right, it like gives you a whole different context of like what you can feel like, what life can be like, how to create an environment which nurtures your full potential, you know? How does it feel to get up that way that early and do practices, eat a certain way, like live in an environment that has energy? And so,
And
yeah,
living in tune with the existence. Living in
yes,
tune with the existence, living in tune with the planet cycles, living in tune with the solar
yes,
cycles.
yes. With the cycle of this the cycle of nature every day, even, right? It's not just it's every day, it's every day of the lunar cycle. It's like there's all these like maha and micro and macro cycles basically. And that's what Ayurveda is too. You know, it's all based in the cycles of nature. So yeah, so basically Panchakarma for me has, you know, like I said, it's the third time I've done it, and it's, I think too, the work that I've done with myself and where I'm at right now in terms of my awareness and nervous system and all the things, um, I really wanted to be able to experience it at a much deeper level and really take it in and receive um, all of the nourishment that it was giving me. Yeah, and allow my cells to really absorb it and to be deeply fed and rearranged, if you will. And yeah, it was really very powerful and beautiful. And I had a birthday when I was there, and my friends are amazing, and they had an amazing party for me. And there were just so many levels of amazingness. So I really enjoyed that. And I also went on a Himalayan yatra with Isha Sacred Walks as well. So it's a pretty amazing trip. Yeah.
And before we get into the yatra or anything, there are two things. One is you said dis-ease. So
Uh-huh. Yes.
you should get into that for the people.
Okay.
And the second thing was in your story you had mentioned, in your Instagram story you had mentioned how you wish everyone could have gone through this
Yes.
experience, this
Yes.
panchakarma experience. So what made you say that? And you can make, these are two very big questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what made me say that is, so I'll just kind of take it back to, you know, what you said earlier about like, oh, why can't we just create cultures and companies that like actually nourish us reaching our full potential and not just like damaging our health, right? So the very first time I went to India, I remember I was in a cycle, I had been in a cycle of building a company myself for about 7 years. And I was really wiped out, actually. Um, and even though it was healthcare related and like holistic related, I was really wiped out. And I just remember like the way that their team feels there. Now, okay, this is India, so they have the staff, they have people cooking for them. They have a certain level of support that is much harder to have in the Western world, right? It's just not the same.
It's
But
not possible financially.
not really, no. I mean, for some people, right? But it's just a different culture. Um, and that creates a certain level of ease, I would call. I mean, not that, of course they have to manage those people, but the way that they do it is very beautiful and very, it feels very like family like, very healthy, very supportive. And for me, I remember like having this awareness, like, oh wow, especially as a woman, like we have diffuse awareness, right? And um, we are, traditionally kind of more tuned to taking care of home and food and like the nurturing environment, traditionally. So even if we're working hard and we are running companies or whatever we're doing, there's oftentimes like all of these other things. And some people have kids even, there's a lot of different things that can happen. So what I became aware of is like both for myself and many women and people that I saw in my practice and in the world, like in the Western world, we're kind of like trying to do like, I don't know, 5 to 10 full-time jobs at once. And it's just, there's a certain level of impact that has on the system. And like what you were speaking about earlier, where like somebody is trying to do a startup, for example, and that's where their energy is going. And potentially because of the way that their life is set up, they're not then paying attention to food. They're not able to like, you know, do this more holistic support in their life. So I think that's something that I really noticed, and I noticed it again this time, of like, how then can I be with my life in the Western world in a way that's just more easeful and not as hard on myself, even though I'm still like gonna do all the things. I think the way that I am within myself shifts when I witness that. So that's really cool for me. But the real reason that I said I wish everyone could experience this is because the level of, it's just like a space that's held for you where you get to like rest, be nourished, be taken care of, and also go to these much deeper levels in the system where you get to like cleanse, but also be super rejuvenated. Like the oils, the herbs, the food, the touch, the treatments, they're all like building the system, like nourishing the nervous system, balancing it. And I think so much of us run at this kind of depletion state. Not always, but if we're talking about regular people in the world, a lot of people use like caffeine and sugar and this and that to kind of like keep themselves going. And there's not as much of that cycle, which is nature cycle of work, rest, work, rest. So anyway, it's a deep dive into that, and I just don't see it anywhere else, like anywhere else that I've ever seen. And I've been, like I said, in the world of personal development and health and wellness, functional medicine, all that stuff for, somewhere in that world or in the perimeter of that world for 27 years or something. So yeah, I see a lot, like I just feel it in myself, and I just see so many people that could use it. It would really shift their life. So a lot of people are chasing fatigue or imbalance or disease or this or that. And it's really tough to watch, honestly, and it's not very effective what's being done and what's being offered. So that's one answer. What was the other question again?
Disease.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so disease. Well, obviously disease means dis-ease. So it's a part of you that's not at ease. And also what I have learned and what I have seen is that whatever disease is there, it's like part of your system, physical, energetic, emotional, psychological, on whatever levels, is disconnected, blocked, or cut off from life and nature, and that the flow of vitality and life energy that naturally keeps you aligned with um, the power that builds the body, heals the body. It's like there's constantly repair, health, healing, cellular repair, regeneration, like constantly that process is happening in the system. So if there's parts of us that are kind of walled off from that, blocked from that, which can happen through trauma, psychological, emotional stress, our relationship with life itself and how we contract or protect ourselves or, whatever it is. So, yeah, I also think it's really important to recognize that we live in a world that is very into labels and very into marketing and very into selling medicine and very into a lot of things that get people married to their diagnosis, which is really, really dangerous, not healthy, not real. It's not, it's really important that we don't become attached to labels of diseases and diagnosis. So, yeah, just being in the world of like alternative medicine, Ayurveda, functional medicine, Chinese medicine, I've seen things from a lot of angles, and so I see disease it's just in broader context. And I do also, I have seen a lot of people become really identified with like, I have this, I have that. And that's like it's like an attachment they have. It's really not good. I'm not saying they're not good. I'm saying that's not a healthy relationship with life, you know. But it's being encouraged, by our current setup. So yeah, it's a big conversation, but and obviously, all that said, there is very real things that happen where um, people can have things manifest on a very physical level. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm just saying the relationship with it is really important, and there's a lot more um, space and room for nature and self-correction and healing than most of us have access to, at least in our awareness right now.
It's very beautiful what you share, because what's coming up for me is there's the outside in approach and the inside out approach. And there's a bunch of ideas that are just really coming up, but I want to protect you from the ideas and not just boom smash them in, because it will be
Go
difficult for
ahead.
you to
I can handle it.
not you, but the audience. I know you can. You're good. But like, here's the thing. I was going to tweet about some of these things coming up for me.
Mm,
When somebody asks me a question, the question comes on the basis of a set of assumptions.
mm, mm, mm.
So they're asking me a question, and I it immediately assumes that the model of reality that they've created is the model of reality that I am also subscribed to.
Or it's like the model of reality, period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And me, in my innocence, may create that model in response to their question and give an answer. Or
Uh-huh.
me, in my even more innocent truth, which is what I actually tend to do, is I give them an answer which which like smacks their entire model of reality, which is I'm just coming from the truth itself. I'm like this, and they're like, "What the fuck?" It's like, and what happens is people are not asking questions to discover. People are asking questions to validate. So even when you're looking at from the perspective of health and medicine, they've taken on a particular identity. They say, this is the model of reality. This is what it is. I'm 100% certain. I'm going to go in with this. And if somebody else disagrees, then, well, that's their problem, but I'm right. And so when you take that and you assume that you have a disease or this is how you just are, you've already pigeonholed yourself into a limitation.
Huge,
And
huge
that's a trouble.
limitation.
Yeah, huge limitation, a big trouble for yourself, right? And that applies to everything, right? Because the same particular pattern that this approach, if you're there in this location, you're approaching all the locations in your life, all the different areas of your life in the same way, because it's a deeper approach. It's the way that you're carrying yourself. It's the way that you're choosing to approach life itself, and that
That's your
becomes the
relationship with life itself, right?
exactly.
And it's what you shared about like wanting validation. I mean, that is based on if you really boil it down, fear.
Hmm.
Fear and wanting to feel safe.
Safety, accrual, control, security.
Which is it's kind of heartbreaking actually.
It is,
Because
and
it's so limiting and it's so against life.
it's interesting because earlier you mentioned trauma as well, and all this
Hmm.
relates to trauma.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know how to. Is it Peter Levine or Peter Levine?
Yeah. Hmm.
Peter Levine, yeah. I have a quote. When you mentioned trauma, I immediately opened up my phone because I have one of his quotes. So I just opened it up and I searched this word witness
Hmm.
because I wanted to share this. I said, oh, trauma, this right here is extremely relevant, especially considering what we just mentioned. We just had
Hmm.
a really good lead into this. So here's what Peter Levine has to say.
Hmm.
Trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness.
Yes.
I'm going to repeat that. Trauma
Hmm.
is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness.
Hmm.
My observation, assuming this, let's say if this is, how do we explore that this is true? Experimentation within oneself. And if you do discover that this is true, or some version of it is true, then what that leads to, what that concludes to is the fact that you can immediately put an end to the creation of trauma. Physical trauma is a different thing. I'm not talking about physical trauma. If you're going to war or something happens, the physical trauma, that's a completely different dimension of things. We're not talking about that kind of physical trauma on the mental, intellectual, emotional levels, from a mental, emotional levels, right? That's it. This could be the end of it. So
Yeah.
practicing that.
Yeah. Really beautiful. I love that quote from Peter Levine. So good. Um, yeah, and I think, in a way, what you just shared is in a way another reason why I would want everyone to have these experiences because trauma, limitation, fear, the way you hold yourself in terms of your relationship with life, it's really based in, at least for me, it was. Um, and I see this with a lot of people, is not really having their needs met, and really being like undernourished and um, in some way, in whatever way it manifested in their karmic experience of their childhood and life, like they have some shame or some guilt, or a lot of times a lot of shame and guilt, and there's some cellular holding around deserving to live fully, deserving to be fully nourished. And deserving isn't my favorite word because it's not like we deserve it, but it's like we're life. And by being life and by being here, there's inherent value in that. And there's a possibility and an opportunity to evolve and to participate with life in a way where you do get nourished, you do get to evolve, you do get to like create and really use this opportunity to achieve your full potential. You get that opportunity. And my experience with Mother Earth and so many things, it's like the feminine aspect of me too, like I've really had to work on my own relationship with that, like my own wounding around being, I don't know, these are not the best words, but like being worthy of being receiving nourishment, like true nourishment and actually thriving. So, yeah, I would say that for me, it's been incredibly healing to allow that and to really metabolize it, absorb it, digest it, take it in. And then, yeah, I see that it would be really beneficial for a lot of people to
Yeah.
really allow that process. It's like a mother's love. It's like
Hmm.
true mother's love. So many of us had mothers who themselves were traumatized, who generationally also were kind of depleted and or whatever, stressed, in control, in some kind of anxiety, anxious response. Like my mom definitely is, she's like very dysregulated in her nervous system. And that wasn't really like, then that got imbibed into my nervous system. Instead of like resting into your mother's arms and being nourished by the feminine, it's like there's some level of like, thing in your system. That's just one way to, and everybody's story is different, but to really be able to, I think that's the value of meditation, of personal work, of learning all this stuff, is that you really start to rest into the ground of being, into um, the deeper reality that is, beyond our stories and beyond all of the scenarios. Yeah, and you just get to play and experiment with all of this in a way that's really beautiful.
And I do want to say one thing that you had coached me through this actually was about getting needs met, and it was that I don't actually need to get all my needs met. It's
Mm,
probably impossible to get all my needs met
mhm.
at a given point in time, right? If you were to plot, it's going to get mathematical, but if you were to plot if you were to plot a curve and say like at any given moment in time, what number of needs are being met, assuming you could quantify the needs as in terms of like and from a single numerical value, right? It's not going to be like you're going to hit a peak and it's just going to keep on staying at that peak, right? It's not going to be like that. It's going to be ups
Right.
and downs, and maybe I'll never reach the peak, right? And the other thing is when I say numerical value, it may not be possible for us to even assign a numerical value because oftentimes we have two opposite needs that we want. Well, we want this thing and we want this thing, and sometimes you cannot have both, and you cannot have both in the same time. Like you can have them at different times, but sometimes you have to commit to one thing, so you cannot have that and this at the same time. So you have to understand out of the what is it that actually matters for you, and you have to let all these things just dissolve and say this is what I care about, and I'm going to prioritize. It's about priority. So you prioritize what it matters for you, and then you be okay with like, okay, I'm fine if everything's not met. Because even if I prioritize this, it still may not happen for me, and that's totally cool. The main thing here that Naomi's pointing out to is, as much as possible, can I meet my own needs? And can
Yeah.
I meet them in a way that I don't need anything physical,
Hmm.
anything external to me, but internally I can take care of it at least as much as possible,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, because I've noticed this in myself. I noticed this in many people around me, especially. And when I was a teenager, I had this existential crisis, and I said, "Hey, look, I don't want to be a slave to anything, to anybody." And
Mm.
that's really what it comes down to. That doesn't mean you can have relationships, and
Yeah.
you need relationships. That's how we function in society, in existence, right? We accomplish things together, but that you don't need to be a slave to the existence or
Yeah.
to the society, to the relationships. You don't need to be a slave to whatever possessions you hold, but it's just there. In Stoicism, it's a very beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I don't know if it's entirely Stoicism, but Epictetus's Manual on Kyridion, which I read like a religious text like when I was, this was very long ago before I even got into meditation. That was one of the things that got me into meditation and Kyridian, the Manual on Stoicism by Epictetus. You can find it on MIT Classics. It's free. Anyways, one of the points there was, you know, imagine you were on a ship, a cruise ship, and you are just going. You get off the cruise ship and you're just in exploring the city. Now, the cruise ship blares his horn. Now it's time for you to go. So you're gonna go back. You're gonna leave behind whatever is there in the city. Maybe you heck with some people, made some friends, whatever. You leave behind, you go back to the cruise ship because it's time for you to go. Similarly, your wife, your child, your house, your any other possessions, when that ship calls you, it's time for you to
Mhm.
go because none of that is you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So whatever needs you think, yes, we have situations that we create for ourselves, but it may not work out to our benefit, and maybe none of my needs will ever be met, and that's totally cool. But my focus is more on like how can I dissolve all that, and if I do get what I want, that's cool. I'll conduct it to the best of my ability. But if I don't, that I mean that does suck. But I want to rather con- create myself in a way that um, I can be in integrity and contribute and live a profound life, no matter what it is outside. Obviously, I'm not there, but if the focus is like that, then it'll be a win-win scenario regardless whether I get or I don't get, right? And so, yeah, I think this is very important to note here because what Naomi's
True.
saying, you want to nurture yourself as a life, but at the same time, you need to recognize that you are not going to necessarily get all the needs you need on level of body, mind, emotions, or whatever. So,
And I think just a couple more things, which is that you're absolutely right that, I mean, that's the whole point of sadhana, of the spiritual process, right? Is that because if, you could sort of extrapolate what I said out and it wouldn't be awesome for the whole world to like try to get all their needs met at a certain level. That's crazy. That's not what we're talking about either, really. But um, by doing sadhana and by really cultivating, again, your connection with a much deeper, underneath the personality,
sadhana, clarify
yeah.
what.
So it's I would say it's spiritual practices or yogic technology. It's like very real processes that you're doing that cultivate your nervous system and your whole system in a very deep way that allows you to have access to the aspects of yourself that are beyond the body, the emotions, the mind, the psyche, the karma, you know? And you're right, like my experience with that is you cultivate your connection to the place inside of you that no matter what happens, you're okay. And like, you said it the way you did, and I'm saying it the way I'm saying it, but ultimately that's the most important thing because all this other stuff is just temporary. And like you said, when the boat or the horn blows, you get to go. The other thing I will say though, as well, just really quickly, and I don't know why I think I should say this, but there's two, like you're a man and you're masculine. I'm a woman. I'm feminine nature more. And obviously, we also talk about being more balanced in the masculine, feminine, and not kind of overemphasizing that in our evolutionary process. At the same time, I have heard it said before that like men need more austerity to evolve and women need more like safety to evolve, or like more like almost like affluence or abundance. I don't know if that's true, but what
That
I
resonates with me. It resonates with me. I'm gonna say that
do,
in my
I do
experience, it
feel that
resonates.
there's a lot of truth to it. And as a woman, I really do notice. Again, I mean, I'm working on it in my own way, but I really do notice in my system, they talk about masculine and feminine and I've studied it a lot and what we need. And for a woman, like we are hardwired to feel we need safety. Like that is like hardwired into our nervous system. It's really supportive for us to feel safe. And then we can like really rest. And so, in any case, for whatever it's worth, I just thought I'd say that.
Well, it's worth it right now actually because now I just reflected. I have brothers and I have sisters, an extended family, right? Like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, extended to like I don't even know how many cousins, but
Okay.
uh, but
That
the
Indian thing of like mother, brother's cousin, sister, or
yeah.
something. Love it.
But yo, like that's what it is actually because I treat the men and the women differently because and it's funny you say this because I am very traditional in that respect in that
Uh-huh.
regard because um when the boy misbehaves versus when the girl misbehaves, I'm very different on that. And actually, the kind of misbehavior I expect from a boy, the line is like much farther out than I would from the girl because the girl is not going to misbehave in like that much way. But when the guy does, I will fucking kick his ass. And I have done like you can now talk to my brothers, even friends. This goes with friends too. Like with guys, I'm like hardcore extreme to a certain way where I push them probably to a certain degree of austerity, which people don't necessarily do, but I'm cool with it. And I'm for sure they respect me for it and they appreciate me for it because they kind of they want that. But then toward the girls, I am like a lot more different. Where I'm just talking from the point of like how I'm oriented, how my wiring is, right?
Yeah.
So, like towards with the girls, I'm more towards like making sure they're like safe and stuff. But then for the guys, I don't give a fuck if he's safe. But if he does something stupid, I will tear him apart, right? But it's almost maybe it's also because I do expect different behaviors from them, and then people do behave differently. Like women will behave differently around me, and men will behave differently around me. But it is not all of them, but at least like in like the family and things like this, right? And close friends. It's probably because of that
I
wiring
think
that
it's honestly, if we're really talking about nature and like, nature's, there's, this is potentially so controversial, but in my lived experience, it's real, masculine, feminine nature. The more I've studied it, the more I've understood it, the more I've been able to reflect on all my life experiences and scenarios through that lens, just as a way of more deeply understanding it and more masterfully navigating life. It's real. I think it's real. And it's never, nothing is ever like, okay, this is the model and this is the steps and this is how you do it. No, 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 that's not how life works. But still, you can use tools and um, kind of use the wisdom there and more masterfully navigate situations. Yeah, fun stuff.
yeah. I think with that we can close it out. Do you have to go? I think you have to go, right?
And yeah, I have another call in a few minutes, but thanks for this conversation. I
Yeah,
hope it's coherent and supportive in some
I
kind
think
of
it,
way.
yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was definitely coherent. I don't know if questioning its coherence is even necessary.
Well,
There's
you know
definitely
what I'm like.
yeah. It's I I am sure this is going to be really valuable for people. I don't know what to title it, but yeah, I don't know. The Abhishek and Naomi experience, like Joe Rogan experience.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, fun. Well, it's fun. And yeah, I look forward to having more conversations and going down more, like going through, just different angles of approach, I guess I would say.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's going to be really fun. I look forward to how this touches more people.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, are you going to stop the recording or?